I asked Greg if he would be willing to come and speak with us, and he greatly agreed to do so. So we welcome Greg Ness.
Well, thank you. Just I want to make sure that Murphy's Law is in operation here. It isn't, so everything is working fine. This is a wonderful facility for this, so thank you all for coming here tonight. I'm just going to be talking about how to take better photos, and this applies whether you take most of your photos with an iPhone, a Galaxy 6 or 7, or very sophisticated camera equipment. And so hopefully, no matter who you are and what type of equipment you use, you get something out of this. One of the things I've always found is that no matter who I'm talking with or taking pictures with that's into photography, I learn something as well too. I learn about great places to take photos. I learn about different photo techniques. So it's really a pleasure to be here. So why don't we just go ahead and get started. This first picture is one that I took in Death Valley. It's at a place called the Racetrack. It's in a very, very remote part of Death Valley, and it's really interesting. Scientists for years couldn't figure out how these rocks, that particular rock there is probably 50 pounds. So and this surface, when you're walking on it, is like concrete. So how did this 50-pound rock get all the way across this playa surface? And scientists didn't figure it out till about 16 years ago. Nobody gets to this location in the winter just because of the weather, and it's cold. And what happens is the little rain that Death Valley gets starts forming on the surface, this playa surface, and then there'll be some ice, and the ice forms around the rock, and then the wind comes up, and the ice has just lifted the rock enough on the surface to slide the rock along, and nobody's, to this day, only one scientist has actually seen these things move. But these rocks are all over that surface. I have a Jeep Rubicon, which I drove out there because it's such a rough road to get there. And when I got there, I was talking to somebody. They said, "Oh, you don't want to take your Rubicon in there." Well, if I can't take my Rubicon in there, what can I take in there? And they said, "Well, you better rent a modified Jeep." So I went to this place and I rented a modified Jeep to go in there. And about halfway in, over on the side of the road, was a Jeep Rubicon with a broken axle. So I'm really glad, and I don't know where the occupants were, but there were buzzards overhead, and I just kept on going. I looked for somebody, I didn't see anybody, and kept on going. I ended up at this place. I got there in the evening. I took some night photos there. I took some sunset photos, and just stayed in the Jeep overnight. And I was the only person there. It's kind of eerie in this place with these sliding rocks. And in the morning, I took this photo shortly after the sun came up. But it's really a fascinating place if you ever get a chance to get there. So, just a few facts. I live in Denver now. I grew up in Moorhead. In fact, my first job out of college, I went to Moorhead State, as it was called in those days, and my first job out of college was working for the Detroit Lakes Tribune. So I did see a write-up in the Detroit Lakes Tribune about my talk tonight. I didn't recognize who they were talking about in there because I'm not a world-renowned photographer. I'm a very avid photographer, and I think it's really hard to claim that anybody is world-renowned nowadays because there are so many great photographers out there. And I think that's wonderful. The equipment and things like iPhones and all of the wonderful advances in technology have just opened this up to a lot more people, and I'm just really avid about photography. People ask me if I'm a professional, and I always say no, I'm not a professional, and the reason I say that is because I consider a professional as somebody who derives a major portion of their income from photography. Now, if somebody asks me, do I have the skills of a professional, I will say yes. I've shot with National Geographic photographers, some of the people that might be called world-renowned, and I'm giving them as many tips as I'm getting from them. So I've been shooting for a long, long time, and hopefully that's helped me learn a little bit more about this. So I just want to share some things that I think can help you improve your photography, and some of the places that I've been, and interesting photos hopefully along the way. This is from Easter Island. This is, if you're looking for a remote place for a vacation, you want to go to Easter Island, because it is out in the middle of nowhere in the South Pacific Island. I mean, it's like 2,000 miles from the mainland. The next closest group of islands is, I think, like Tahiti, which is, you know, another 1,800 miles away. And the inhabitants of Easter Island, before it was discovered by Europeans, would build these, they're called moai. And these moai would, there were clans all over Easter Island, and they all built their own moais, and they were supposed to protect them from other clans or any warring tribes that came along across the ocean. And it is absolutely, these things are giant, you know, they're some of them are 25, 30 feet tall, these heads, and these have actually, this is in where they used to quarry the stone. They just start cutting into the side up there to create these faces, and how they got these, they've actually transferred a lot of these right down to the coastline. And it's like, how did they do this? And it's a pretty amazing story when you're there. So, this picture is a coastal Alaskan brown bear in Alaska. I was up there last summer doing photography, and it's an absolutely amazing experience, because when you go over to Africa and you go on a safari, they won't let you out of the safari vehicle, and they're always protecting you from the wildlife there. Up there, you walk up to the shore of the rivers coming into the ocean, and the grizzlies are there trying to catch salmon. And thankfully, the grizzlies have learned that salmon tastes a lot better than photographers. So they'll look at you like, well, what are you doing here? But they don't ever make any threats. These things, they're 8, 9, sometimes 10 feet high when they're standing on their hind legs, and they were as close as 10 feet. So it's absolutely amazing, and they were all over the place. When we were there for about 5 days. We stayed on a boat right off the coast, so we didn't have to be there at night. And then we would take a skiff into shore during the day to shoot photography. And this is one. He looks like he's charging us, but he's just charging a salmon. They'll kind of go real slow until they see the back of a salmon on the surface, and then you just can't believe how fast they can move. But this is some of the camera equipment I use, and all of this stuff works really great. It's just that some of it works better for other purposes. I use an iPhone 6S. I just got a DJI Phantom 4 drone, which is kind of fun. You go up and all of a sudden it's like you're a bird, because it takes you about, in about 1 minute I can go from being on the ground to up 300 feet, taking a look at what the sunset's looking like, which is behind us at the lake. So that's opened up a new perspective. I have a Canon PowerShot SX60HS. I'm going to talk about sensor sizes, and that might get a little deep for some of you, but it'll be helpful, I think, for you to know if you want to buy a certain type of camera equipment besides using your phones. The Canon PowerShot SX60 goes from 21 millimeters to 1365. I thought I saw somebody in here who might have had either the SX60 or the 50. Is there anybody who has one here? Okay, maybe it was another model. I saw it from afar, but you know, that thing, 35 millimeter equivalent goes up to 1365 power. So you can get in really close on animals when you're trying to photograph wildlife. I have a GoPro Hero 4 Black, you know, the kind you can attach for action photos. I have a Canon G3X, which is something that's a 1-inch sensor. It's a very compact camera. It goes from 24 millimeters to 600 millimeters equivalent. And so that's really good for photography. I've got a Canon 5 DSR and a Canon 1DX and a whole bunch of lenses and tripods. And none of this stuff, for all purposes, is better than others. Every one of these has advantages and disadvantages, and we'll talk a little bit about that. So, the type of photography I do is landscape, travel, wildlife, nightscapes, and life, just life happening around me. In fact, I'm very thankful for this presentation tonight because we live on Pelican Lake, and I have my 3 kids back and all our grandchildren. So back at our lake home, there's 21 people right now. So I'm really glad to be here tonight, a little peace and quiet. So this was shot in Canyonlands National Park, a night shot. Very often for our night shots, we'll use lighting that illuminates the rocks or the vegetation around there. And this was taken at a time when we knew the central core of the Milky Way, that kind of bulge you see above the horizon there, is visible. And it's a wonderful place because when you're doing night photography, you're always looking for dark sky locations. And if you've ever seen you can go online and Google dark sky finder, and you'll get a map of the United States. And I'm always, at the lakes, people come to visit and say, oh, I can't believe how many stars you can see here. Well, actually, Minnesota is pretty light polluted, just because it doesn't take much from a town just 40 or 50 miles away to mess up your photography, your night photography a little. So it's nice to get in a place like this where the towns are very far away and you really have some dark skies. This is on Easter Island, and this was our guide, Nahani. She took us down this tunnel, how they originally found this. I mean, it was under vegetation where you entered in this thing. This is a lava tube. And most of these islands in the Pacific were formed by volcanic action. And back when that island was formed, just picture hot lava coming right down this tube and just dumping into the ocean. You're about, 80, 90 feet above the ocean right there, and this was right where I asked her if she'd model for me so I could shoot this picture. And it was right at sunset, so it's a very difficult lighting situation. And this is one that, it'd be a little tough for an iPhone to do this type of thing, but, some more sophisticated equipment makes that job a little bit easier. By the way, if you do want to see other photos that I've taken, you can find me at either of these locations. Flickr, just Greg Ness, and on Instagram, which I just started, at GL Ness. So there's a lot of photos, some of them that you'll see tonight, but a lot more on there. So it's hard to do something that distinguishes your work nowadays because 2 billion photos per day are uploaded and shared on the internet. 2 billion. And I think that is kind of intimidating, but I also think it speaks to the fact that no matter how good a photographer you are, and I mean that locally, I mean that regionally, I mean that internationally, nobody can be everywhere all the time. Even if you are a good photographer. When I drove up here, I had things to do here, but I saw 2 egrets right across the road. It would have been a great, great picture. And I saw somebody going down there to get a picture. They got the picture tonight because I had other things to do getting ready for this. And that's what's so fun about getting on like the Facebook page that, for the club here and seeing somebody was at a great location for a sunset or a sunrise, or they happened to see the bear crossing the road and got the picture, but people are sharing a lot of photos. This particular site is called Nugget Point. It's on the South Island of New Zealand. I was on the west side of the island, and this lighthouse is on the east side of the island. I drove all the way through the night and got to this location. Then there was a kind of a hike to get there, and got there just about 10 minutes before this photo was taken. So it took me a little longer than I anticipated, but it's an absolutely beautiful location, and the sunrise was absolutely incredible. By 2017, 80% of all photos taken will be with a mobile device. So it just shows you what the trend is. So if you think, again, that you have to get some very sophisticated equipment to join the rest of the world in taking photos, you're wrong, because most people are taking photos on their mobile device. This was not taken on a mobile device. This was taken with one of my bigger cameras, but it was in Paris. It was shortly before, about 2 weeks, my wife and I were there about 2 weeks before the terrorist attacks, and pretty scary when we heard about that, because a lot of the places that we were at, including some that were, you know, the target of these terrorists, we were at. So, but I scouted a long time to find this location to shoot from, and it just couldn't have turned out to be a better vantage point for that. Like, one of the things I'll be talking about later is that when you're shooting photography, one of the things that's always going to be, that's going to improve your photography is try to shoot from different perspectives, and try to find a perspective that other people don't shoot from. And by that, even with an iPhone, get down low, shoot it from above, you know, shoot people from the side, shoot them from the front. Try to change the angle of your photo, and the Eiffel Tower, I've got, from that trip I must have 17 photos of the Eiffel Tower that I love, and they're all from a different perspective. I obviously don't have time to go through those tonight, but I think that's part of the fun of photography, is find a way to find different perspectives on your photography. And by the way, if any of you have any questions as we go through this, please feel free to ask. You know, I want to make sure I'm giving you the information that you need to help you improve your photography. 80% of the people who share photos already think they take good photos. So I want to commend you on being here tonight. You probably think you can learn something to improve your photos, but 80%, I think these are the same 80% who are posting pictures of their breakfast and their lunch and their dinners, and putting them on Facebook. And so I commend you for being here. This is on the Adriatic Sea in Italy. It's a town called Viesta, and just a beautiful little spot. And we were staying in the hotel right here. As night was falling, I love shooting in the blue hour. The blue hour is that hour immediately after sunset, and it's also the hour preceding sunrise. And you just get this nice blue light, and especially with the lights on in the town, there was no competition in the sky for the beauty of the town reaching out into the sea. So, today what I'm going to talk about is the tools of the trade, what you need to take a photo with, time, because that's always a challenge for a lot of people, knowledge, what you can do to improve your knowledge, and opportunities, at least how I view opportunities and find opportunities to photograph. This is a blue-footed booby. I just got back from the Galapagos Islands. It is one of the most amazing, I've been to a lot of amazing places, and this place, I have to get back there. It is so, the animals have no fear of man, and you can just walk right up to them. This is part of the blue-footed boobies mating dance, and they're prancing all over the place with these blue feet, and you're laughing at the same time you're taking the photo because they're so funny. But what a wonderful place for photography. So tools. I'm just going to tell you some of my favorite quotes in photography. Photography is no more about equipment than writing is about word processors. I would much rather see a great photo from somebody taking it with an iPhone than I would rather see a mediocre photo from somebody with the most expensive equipment in the world. Photography isn't about the equipment. It's about how you see things and the opportunity to take those pictures and present them to people. Buying expensive Nikon doesn't make you a photographer, it makes you a Nikon owner. Insert Canon, Sony, Olympus, whatever, Panasonic, whatever name you want there, but the same thing applies. I love this quote, the best camera is the one you have with you. Well, what camera do most people have with them every day? Everywhere. I can't tell you the number of people who have expensive equipment and it's never with them. What good does it do sitting home in your basement? But at least now you've got a really good tool for taking pictures with some of the technology that is available. And the last one, I hate this when somebody says this to me. Your photos are wonderful. You must have a very special camera. I have to tell a story I heard that reminds me of this quote. A very prominent socialite in New York was giving a lavish party, and she invited this very famous photographer to the party. And he arrived at the party, and she was greeting him at the door, and she says, I just can't tell you how amazed and how much I am by your photos and how much I love them. You must have a very special camera. And like most photographers, like I do, he probably just bit his lip and didn't say anything about that. So the party went on, and then they sat down to dinner. A very wonderful, wonderful dinner at this party. And he sat right next to her. So they went all the way through the meal, and he turned to her and he said, you know, he said, I've got to tell you, this is the most wonderful meal I've ever had in my life. You must have a very special stove. So, you know, case in point. Okay, so the first thing I want to get across is don't worry about your equipment. Most of you probably already own a very sophisticated camera. This is my camera, but the same thing will apply to an iPhone 5S or a 5 or a Galaxy 6 or a Galaxy 7, and these phones just keep getting better and better. The specs on these phones are what people would be dying for these specs, you know, 15 years ago in a big camera, 12 megapixels. You can shoot 4K video, really good 4K video with it. You've got HDR capabilities. You can shoot pano shots. You've got burst mode. I love to use the burst mode when all you have to do is hold that shutter button down and you're popping off about, I think about 20, 30 frames a second. It's fun with kids because you can then instantly go through and get the one that's got the best expression on it and just instantly throw the others away. So it's great for things like that. There's something called live view. You can shoot slow motion video, time-lapse video. It's got autofocus, image stabilization, face detection, geotagging, f2.2 lens, so you can shoot in, you know, lower light. This is incredible. So don't, you know, feel like you've got to invest, you know, in 50 pounds of equipment or in tens of thousands of dollars of equipment to shoot a great photo, because this will do it. Now, if you're out there trying to shoot a swan at 300 yards or 300 feet with this, you're going to have a problem. And if you want to do that type of photography, then that's where you've got to start investing in some of the other camera equipment that I was talking about there. We'll talk more about that. So, this is an iPhone photo I took from the plane one day on the way from Denver to Fargo. And, you know, I was kind of amazed by it. But it's perfect for an iPhone photo because it's a real simple landscape. And this is it was in March of the year, and a lot of the winter, the Missouri River has ice on it, or partial ice on it. But the ice had already melted, and this late spring snowstorm came in and blanketed the landscape in white, and the river was just reflecting the blue sky, and I thought it was just it was a fun photo to be taking with the iPhone. Even when I was over in Easter Island, I took this photo with the iPhone. And I think I had the lens I really wanted to use was in my camera bag about 100 yards away. And I thought, oh, I'm just going to take this picture. And I loved it. And this is the kind of, you know, imagery you can take with, that was the iPhone 5S that didn't have, you know, near the capabilities the ones have now, but still shot really great pictures. These photos I'm going to show you, about the next 5, 6 photos here are from Time every year has an iPhone photo contest. All the photos have to come from an iPhone. Doesn't matter which model you have. This was the grand prize winner in there. I just love this photo. And the advantage of the iPhone is it's just, again, it's always with you for those moments when they present themselves that you can take a picture like that. Here's some other ones that won in that contest. You know, gorgeous, gorgeous stuff. This one in China, iPhone. The little kid in a puddle with their bike. And you know, talk about perspective. How would have most people shot this? They'd have just got out, you know, like this. But I don't know whether this person was up on a bank or just, you know, started shooting with their iPhone like this. But what a great perspective in this. Here's another one that won that contest. Any of you could shoot that photo on frozen Detroit lakes in the winter, or whatever lake you're on. And that was one of the big winners in this contest. I didn't stop long enough to read what they were looking at, but I'm assuming some prey was up there, and hopefully the prey wasn't the photographer. You know, just a fascinating photo. Another winner. Just Google Time iPhoto contest, and I think there's like 60 winners in there, and it's just fascinating to see. This was another one. This looked like it was more of a planned shot, but it's an excellent planned shot. Just beautiful. So, like I said, I don't mean to overemphasize the iPhone, but I just want to let everybody know that you know, if you've got a tool like that, you can shoot great photography. These are some of the different sensor sizes, just in relative size, that you're going to be working with if you get into photography. Way down in the lower right-hand corner there is 1/3.2 inch. That's what's in most cell phones. It's a very small sensor because it's in a very small device. And the pictures you can get out of this little tiny sensor in there, it is even, and the way that the naming conventions on these sensors is weird, because a 1-inch sensor isn't 1 inch across. It gets back into TV days with cathode ray tubes, and it's much smaller than that. So when it says 1/3.2 inches, it's a lot smaller than 1/3 of an inch, and you still get these beautiful pictures out of there. There's a lot of cameras out right now with a 1/2.3 inch sensor. By the way, a full frame sensor has about 55 times the surface area of a 1/3.2 sensor. So it stands to reason that you should be able to, assuming you have something great to shoot and you know how to shoot it, you're probably going to get better results with a full frame, APS-C, you know, a micro 4/3, a 1 inch, something like that. But the iPhone or the Galaxies or the other you know, cell phones have an advantage in immediacy. That 1/2.3, that's what's in my Phantom 4. It's in that Canon SX60 I told you about, that goes from 20 millimeters to 1365 millimeters equivalent. Another real popular sensor is a 1 inch sensor. That's the one I said I've got. It's 24 to 600 millimeters equivalent. You see that swan out there, you know, 100 feet away. That thing's going to pull in a real tight shot. Either of those cameras are going to do a really nice job of pulling those in. You know, the SX60 I think you can get for about $350, $400 now. The 1 inch sensor is about $900 now. At least the Canon model of that is. Sony just came out with one that is it's 24 to 600 millimeters f4 constant the whole way. Now, I don't know how technical people are on photography, but f4 means you can take a picture in pretty low light at 600 millimeters, and you can get that for about $1,500. To get a 600 millimeter lens on my big cameras that'll shoot at f4, I have to, that lens would cost me $12,000 alone just for the lens. So, you know, as you go up, you start paying the price in weight, you start paying the price in cost. My rule is the cost of the equipment goes up with the cost of the trip. And also with the chance that I'm not ever going to get back there. I don't want to get to darkest Africa or Patagonia or to Easter Island and not be able to get the shot because I didn't have the advantage with the equipment that I was using to get the shot. Now, here at Tamarac, where, for example, many of you live nearby, you can come over here all the time. I envy you. You know, you don't need a shot that's going to guarantee you get the shot every time you go, because if you don't get it that day, you just go back the next day, or the next weekend, the weekend after that. So, you know, there's no sense in, most of the people who invest in the very finest equipment are people that are either making a living doing this, or they know they're not going to get back and they're going to be in some very tough situations. And that's what the full frame and the larger sensors will do over the small sensors, and I'll talk more about that. There's something, if you go online, it's called DxO Labs. They rate all the sensors in cameras, and they rate all the lenses that are made for these cameras. And this is just to give you a comparison. Again, for those of you not really deep into photography, the higher the ISO number you go, usually the more noise you have in your photo that you have to deal with. You know, it'll look like grain in there, and it'll start affecting the details in the photo. Well, I'm just taking some of the class leaders in all of these different categories. With a full frame camera, I can shoot at ISO 3702 with the same, this is measuring a signal to noise ratio of 30, which produces a pretty good picture. That a 1 2/3 sensor would have to shoot 189 to have that little noise in it. So this, for somebody who's trying to get a shot in Botswana and it's still pretty dark out and the bird is flying across the sky and you're trying to get a good shot and you have to shoot real high ISO, that's where these things become an advantage. And you can see this is a little smaller sensor. Now I have, the ISO is, I can shoot at 3700, what the best APS-C can shoot at 1438, and so on. It just keeps going down as your sensor gets smaller. There's nothing wrong with these cameras, it's just, it's a physics equation, because you're trying to cram more and more pixels into a little tiny space. So, if you just want to shoot with your iPhone, forget I'm even talking about this, okay? Because then it gets technical, and a lot of people don't want that in their life. They've already got their life complicated enough, but if you do, it's fun to know about this. This SX60 that I'm talking about, this $350 camera, go to this guy's site on Flickr, Gary Helm. He's one of my Flickr friends. And in fact, I ran into him in a wildlife refuge in Florida shooting photos one day. And take a look at his pictures. He shoots mostly birds. And you cannot believe the quality of his photos, all shot with a camera a little over $300. Or, yeah, $300. But he can get up really close because of that 1365 millimeters, and you will not believe the quality of his photos. So there's a good example to show you how you can get into photography and not spend a lot of money to do it and walk away with some pretty amazing photos. Every time I go to his site, I want to put all my equipment on Craigslist and just simplify down to that camera. I haven't quite been able to get myself to do that yet, but his site will come close.
You don't need to go to Craigslist, you just call me.
Okay. Okay, so the other thing I was going to talk about is how do you make time for photography? Well, the easiest way to make time for photography is just capture life. You don't have to go to Botswana or, Europe or, the South Pacific. a lot of really interesting things happen in your life, and you've just got to be there to capture them. I carry my big equipment like most people carry their cell phones. It's always with me. Everybody's always saying, "Oh, that's a big camera you're carrying in here," you know, and everybody else has just got their cell phone. But this would have made a great cell phone photo too. This is my grandson. When he was, I think, about 6, 7 months old, and his mom was saying, "No, he didn't get a bath last night." I said, "Well, give him a bath right on I got a tub in the garage, and it, you know, we cleaned it up on the inside. It still had some grease on it from the garage, and he got in there and he just had a ball. And I captured this picture, and you know, the rest is history. So, but that's what I'm talking about. Your life is full of amazing moments. Capture them. This is Longridge here in DL. This is my grandson, Dalton, and I've got a picture of all the grandkids doing this same thing, and I just used a little Photoshop magic to do this, masking, you know, the exposure you're seeing everything with is the last one as he was jumping into the water, and then I just masked him out as I was shooting with a very, I think my 1DX, which will shoot 12 frames a second. So, you know, to get all of that, and it's really fun to do stuff like that. Every time I go to Longridge, I've got slow motion pictures of them going off the bridge. I've got pictures like this. I just have pictures of them going in the water. I've got from every angle you can imagine, and just capture your life. There's all sorts of wonderful things that happen. This is my granddaughter. We were visiting my daughter in Houston, and we went to this little park, and there was this other little girl there. My granddaughter is the smaller one, and pretty soon they started walking around together. They didn't know each other before they got to the park, and they were holding hands, and I thought, this is just too great. I got to capture this. So you can be a famous photographer just capturing your life. This was taken on the front step of our home in Denver. I love to take moon photos. Now, you know, again, we got 1365 millimeter lens in the SX60, or the G3X will go up to 600 millimeters. You can shoot really nice moon photos. This was taken with my big lens and big camera, but just set the tripod up on that camera. Taking pictures of the moon isn't that tough. There's a few little techniques that if you Google, it'll tell you some things to do that'll help improve your moon photos. But you know, again, you don't have to go far from home, in this case the front step, to take the pictures. And I take a lot of pictures from my back deck, or my you know, the front porch, or this is in the backyard. You know, the backyard is full of great pictures. This was taken in the backyard. You know, just get up close. You can get up pretty close with an iPhone or some of these other small cameras, as well as the big cameras. You don't need a macro lens. The advantage of smaller sensors is you get more depth of field. So with a big camera, you've got maybe an 1/8 of an inch or 1/4 of an inch that's in focus, and the rest of it is out of focus. So the smaller the sensor, the more depth of field you've got. So again, just in the backyard. This is just at Coors Field. And again, when I consider home, I consider the events you go to. So, okay, we were just at the ball game. I can't remember if we were there with some of our grandkids, or it's just my wife and I. The one thing that we have going for us in Denver is that the Rockies, as a baseball team, really suck. But they have the most beautiful stadium in the country. You're taking this, the sun always sets over the mountains, and the other thing that's great about baseball games, this is another picture I took at Coors Field just with a small point-and-shoot camera, or my iPhone, I can't remember, doing a panel. I went up, I said, okay, there's got to be one seat at the very top that's right behind the home plate that would be great for this perspective. And somebody was sitting there. So I said, how about I trade you a couple beers for that seat? And they said, sure. So they moved over. There were plenty of empty seats up there. I sat there, and I'm perfectly behind there and shot this panorama. And, you know, it's just a fun photo to take. The great thing about baseball games, too, especially when you're a photographer, there is so many great shots in a baseball stadium. I always go there and buy the cheapest seats. You can go out there in the rock pile, it's called, way out there in center field for $5. And scalpers even have them sometimes for 2 or 3. I always get those tickets because I'm never in my seat. The other thing is that most concerts you go to nowadays or other sporting events, they won't let you take a big camera in there. In Coors Field and most baseball stadiums, if you can carry it, they'll let you in with it. Can't bring a tripod, that's the only thing, but I've gone in there with some really big lenses to shoot, but most of the time I just take a smaller camera. And I'm walking all around that stadium, you know, getting wonderful angles and shots, and I've got a lot of photos from baseball stadiums. They're a wonderful venue for photography. So again, you're just following your life. Same thing that all of you probably do, shooting your kids or your grandkids in sports. You know, one of my grandsons, Garrett, at a soccer game. My grandson Dalton, the one who was jumping off the bridge, now a little bigger at a hockey game, about ready to take a shot. My other grandson, Gavin, with a big cut on the ski right in front of our dock. A loon coming by, this is taken from the dock. I had to lay there for quite a while on the dock, so I could get him close enough for this shot, but it finally worked, and it worked out great. So
Tell them about the narcotics in the fish that you fed them.
I tell them the way I get great wildlife photos is I put doping medication in some food for the animal, and then right before they keel over and fall asleep, I get a great shot of them. No, I don't do that. I just wait. Usually, animals are, you know, if you're still, or a great blue heron was sitting on our pontoon bimini top. He's been there many times, and again, all you have to do for great photos is be ready, and a lot of times the subjects will come to you. This is again one of my grandsons. He was at a sailing school, so right there on Pelican Lake. So, at any rate, you don't have to go far for great photography, and that you can share and people will really appreciate. But I think another important element of photography is knowledge. And you know, the one thing I know about this field of photography is that I will never know everything about it because I'm learning something every day, which I love. But I break the knowledge down into some different areas. By the way, this is on an island in the Galapagos called Bartolome Island. Any of you remember the show Master and Commander with Russell Crowe? You know, back in the days of the wooden ships battling, the English and the French out. And that show, I don't know if you remember when the doctor was recovering, he had been shot and he was recovering, and he all of a sudden saw the French ship when he went up to the top of a rise in the Galapagos when they stopped there, and this was the location of that. And a bunch of us were walking up to go to the very top of Bartolome, and the sun was just coming up when I shot this picture. But I break it down into the art and science of photography. I just about every day I'm online, and I'm you know, or looking in magazines like Outdoor Photography, or going to sites, countless sites on photography that you can find on, or YouTube videos on how to do something better. I'm always reading up on the equipment that I have. Every time I go on a big trip, I reread my manuals. Software, you know, I use Photoshop and I use Lightroom and some pretty sophisticated equipment. But if you're shooting like iPhone or Galaxy, there's some pretty simple equipment that or software you can get, apps that will help your photos immensely and are really easy to learn. So you don't have to get the sophisticated software either if you're shooting mostly from a mobile perspective. I always take a look at what others are doing. I love getting on Flickr, I love getting on Instagram, I love getting on Facebook. I just love seeing photos that other people are shooting. And you always learn something from that. Just being on the Facebook page here, there's so much I've seen that, God, I wish I'd have taken that picture. I wish I could have been there. Oh, I love the perspective that somebody got on this. And the more you look, the more you will be able to see when the opportunity presents itself. I'm always looking about upcoming opportunities, trips I might want to be going on. At the end of this year, I'll be going to Cuba. I'm really excited to do that before, the Hiltons and the others move in and change that like the rest of the Caribbean. I want to see Cuba the way it is today. Going on a trip to the Antarctic in January, the following month. I'm really excited about that. I'm already doing research on what type of things I'll need, what type of equipment, what type of shots I might want to try and get. So, these are all things that you need to kind of keep doing to improve your photography. If you do a lot of iPhone photography, this is a site you should write down. It's just called iPhonePhotographySchool.com. One of their great, you will find countless resources on there about how to improve your iPhone photography. A lot of them are videos, a lot of them are just short articles. There's one specific one, 7 hidden iPhone camera features that every photographer should use. It's about a 15-minute video. Watch that video, your iPhone photography will improve 200, 300, 400%. He's going to tell you how to use some of these features that I was talking about on the specs that are really fun to use, and you can really get interesting either photography or video if you access those things. So iPhonePhotographySchool.com. I assume that there's something like this for Galaxy, but I don't own Samsung or other type of equipment, so I can't speak to that. But this is I've converted the articles into PDFs and I have them on my computer. I must have 30 articles from this site. And then, if you want, you can get a diploma from the iPhone Photography School. They're giving away all this stuff because they want you to register, and then you become an official iPhone graduate. But I haven't gone that far yet. So, but you get a lot of neat stuff. So, this was a newborn guanaco in Patagonia. Patagonia is probably like the U.S. West was back in about 1830. There's hardly any roads there. What roads there are pretty rough roads. There's very few roads, and you're going miles and miles. And all of a sudden we saw this movement. There were a couple of us in the car, and we saw this movement out just not far from the road. And you can tell, we could tell that a guanaco, which is kind of like in the llama family, it was giving birth, and we just stopped, and up popped this newborn guanaco, and I got this picture. And when you get in a situation like this, and everything's kind of happening fast, it's where you really want your instincts to take over. You don't want to be thinking about the manual and the article you read and how do I do this. You're hoping that you can get your instincts take over. There's an author by the name of Malcolm Gladwell who's written a number of very popular books, Blink, What the Dogs Saw, Outliers, several others. And he talks about the 10,000-hour rule. And he says that if you're really going to get great at something or world-class at something, the 10,000-hour rule is a pretty good indicator. If you want to become a concert pianist, you can bet that concert pianist has probably spent at least 10,000 hours practicing the piano. If you want to be a ballerina, the 10,000-hour rule probably applies. If you want to be a professional hockey player, that rule probably applies. And it's the same thing with photography. I can tell you I'm far past 10,000 hours with a camera I'm past 10,000 hours with Photoshop. I am past 10,000 hours with Lightroom. And I'm getting to the point in photography which I really like, which is where I don't have to think about it anymore. It just, stuff starts becoming automatic. Another way that I like to share this is this somewhat cryptic code down here. This is on Tierra del Fuego off the southern tip of South America, and these are king penguins. And they were all around us, and it was a very difficult photo situation because they got this black on them, they've got this white on them, and you're trying to get this perfect exposure, and they're moving. One of them was trying to steal my lenses while I was shooting the photo of the other one. But what that stands for down there is the stages of learning that we all go through. UI, and I'll use language as an example here to help you understand what I'm talking about. The first one UI stands for unconscious incompetence. A baby doesn't know that it doesn't know French. It's ignorant of the fact that it doesn't know something. But as that little boy or girl grows up, they become consciously incompetent. They might say to their mom or dad, "Those people are speaking funny. Why are they speaking funny, Dad?" "Oh, they're speaking French. It's another language. You don't know that language. We speak English in our home, but there's other people in the world who speak French." Now that child has become consciously incompetent. They know that they can't speak French, but they know that there are other languages out there. The next stage you get to, so let's say that child now gets to high school and college, and they say, "I want to learn French. I think that's a cool language." Well, they start learning it, and they become consciously competent. They can speak French, but it's kind of halting, and they have to think about it, and as they practice more and more, they get better and better, and finally they become unconsciously competent. They can speak French. They don't have to translate it first into English. They just speak it just like you and I speak English. And it's just a natural, intuitive reaction because they've spent so much time learning that language or being immersed in it. So that's a stage we go through in just about every type of learning, and photography is no exception. So the more you can do to move yourself along there, the better you'll get at photography. This is in Patagonia. This is in Torres del Paine National Park. Absolutely amazing spot. This was a very difficult light situation. The sun was just coming up. There were white clouds, white snow fields. I wasn't getting quite the perspective. I've got 20 different perspectives of these mountains, and this is one of them. And I figured the only way I'm going to get the shot I want is start climbing this hill, very steep hill on the side. And I started climbing in the dark with a flashlight because I wanted to be up there when the sun rose to get this picture. And I got up there, and this was a result of this. So the other thing I think you have to do better photography is learn to see. What do you want to see? One of the things I always do to help me understand what I really want to photograph is ask myself, what's the caption going to be here? You know, when you put a photo on Facebook or, share it with somebody somewhere else, you usually put a little caption in there. And I always try and think about what the caption is. And here the caption was just plain grandeur. Just this amazing place. And so I think you have to also work to shoot. The great photographers that I've seen, they didn't just get lucky to get that shot. You see a shot from the Grand Canyon that is just absolutely incredible. They've been there 50 times. Sooner or later, they're going to get a killer sunset or a sunrise or something else going in that photo. So they've got 49 bad photos, or at least worse photos than the one you probably are seeing, but they go there over and over. So, it's like a place like Tamarac here. Just don't be afraid to keep coming out here because that one great shot is probably the next time you make that trip. So, learn to see and be willing to work for your shots just like the pros do. And that applies whether you're taking photos of your kids at home too. That one expression, you want to be there when they have that expression and capture it. You know, there's just some basics like foregrounds in your photo. Your photos always get a lot more interesting if you've got a foreground in them. My wife and I were in Paris, and we were down there where all the crowd is, and we were looking up. And I saw all these, this is on Notre Dame Cathedral in Paris, the old part of Paris. And you could see all these mythical figures up on there, and they call this a chimera, was the name of this type of creature, or statue. And you know, it looks like he's ready to pounce on the unfaithful down there. And so I said, I want a different perspective on here. I want to get up there where it is looking down on the crowd. Well, there's a ledge out there, and they let you go, but it's really tough because there's a chain link fence. And so I'm begging the tour guide. I said, I need this photo. He said, well, come on over here. There's a little hole in the chain link. And I've got my lens stuck through that hole in the chain link fence and snap this picture, you know. And I thought, oh God, this is exactly what I wanted, you know. It's this creature looking down, ready to pounce, and it was in the fall of the year, and the Eiffel Tower's in the background, and you know, you just, that perspective, I can't say it enough. And having this in the foreground just made that shot so much more interesting than if I had just shot the crowd down below, you know. So look for interesting foregrounds. The rule of thirds, you know, and this is pretty basic in photography, but you know, maybe some of you here have not been into photography that much. When you shoot a picture of something, don't put the subject right in the dead center. Now there's sometimes that it does work out great dead center, and I'll shoot many photos dead center, but most of the time your photos get more interesting if you divided the picture up in thirds, horizontally and vertically, usually at the intersection of those thirds on one side or the other, or top or the bottom, is where things get interesting. So, you know, this photo, you know, the main tower is over on that right third, and the crowd below is at the intersection of the third that runs this way and the third that runs on the right side over there, and it just makes for a much more interesting picture. This is Sacré-Cœur Cathedral in Paris. I shot this from, I was there at the site the day before and shot many, many pictures. I didn't like any of them. Then we were at this other place downtown, and we got way up high, and I had that G3X camera that shoots 24 to 600 millimeters, and that thing is about, 3 miles away where I shot this. So here again, just a little camera, and you're getting there were some wonderful clouds cooperating, but just Google the rule of thirds, and there'll be a lot of great examples of how to improve your photography. It's also in that iPhone photography, you know, site that I talked about. Again, multiple perspectives. This was a drone shot. Just got my drone. This is great. I've shot. This is Phelps Mill. Most of you are probably pretty familiar with this, down by Otter Tail Lake. I've shot way over there on the right where the rocks are on the bottom to get the, you know, I've shot long exposure to get the water being real smooth. I've gotten hip boots and got out in the middle of the river in the fall to get great shots, you know, right above the water level with the fall trees behind. But this was a new perspective for me. And I just set the drone up and, okay, I want a shot from the air. Little did I know that the barn swallows that inhabit most of the roof line up there thought I was a raptor, or thought my drone was a raptor, and I have video of birds just coming at the drone left and right, veering at the last second, and it's kind of pretty scary. I thought there was going to be an incident, but we landed safely. So if you ever take your drone there, just remember the barn swallows will not approve. So. Another thing that I always, you know, tell people is, when in doubt, move in closer. Shots get more interesting. This is about a 100-year-old tortoise in the Galapagos. Most people are trying to get the big shell in the hole. the whole turtle in there. And I thought the greatest shot, I've got some of those photos, but I thought the greatest shot was getting in close on this 100-year-old tortoise, you know, with him looking at the camera, and you know, I think it makes for a much more interesting photo. So when in doubt, move in. And you saw in that last one with the eyes. The eyes are so important in both for people and for wildlife. If the eyes aren't in focus, I throw the shot away. No exceptions. There's just, unless there's something that you don't want the eyes in focus, and there's, you know, maybe you're focusing on somebody swinging a fist and you want to focus on the fist or some other part of the body. But in general, for most shots of wildlife and most shots of people, this was at a model shoot that I was at. And, you know, again, how important it was to make sure that the eyes were in. This one model on the left, her name was Janice, and she had deep blue eyes, and this other guy over here, his name was Sir, and when you looked at him, you felt like you had to call him Sir, because there just wasn't an ounce of fat on his body, and they're great, great models. If you've never worked with models, it is absolutely fascinating. I went up to a workshop that a guy by the name of Tom Bull had in Fort Collins. He lined up all the models, we shot in his studio, and he kind of showed us what to do and showed us how to light them. These people are professionals, and it was absolutely fascinating experience. And again, like I said, work for your shot. A lot of times where I go to these places, I'm trying to get pictures that I haven't seen other people do. This was in Nepal. This is right across from Everest, and we climbed up to the top early one morning, to the top of Kalapatar. This is 18,192 feet. So the breathing was a little hard. And that's the mountain behind it is Pumari, and that's about 26,000 feet. This was shot back in the film days. This was shot in 2001. I didn't know what I was doing then, but luckily it turned out. So, but I love doing that, where you're getting a shot that you know most people aren't going to get, and you just have to work to do that. People died on that trip. I had to go to this place. Then I saw the movie Vertical Limit, and I said, I got to get into technical climbing. I'm almost scared to go to movies. And the reason I wanted to go to the Galapagos, because I saw, you know, Master and Commander, and, you know, about when they were in the Galapagos. Well, anyway, I wanted to climb this, and the minute I got there was a storm coming over this, and it just, we climbed it 2 days later. We spent some time, this is Devil's Tower in Wyoming, and we climbed to the top. This next picture is from the top, and it doesn't look anything like it did in Critters of the Third Kind, if you remember that movie. And there's just kind of a little flat area on the top. We spent most of the day getting up there, and then you rappel off the side all the way down. But again, I thought, okay, a perspective here not many people are going to have, so that was kind of fun. It was a beautiful day for it. Another way I get unique perspectives is Colorado has 54 peaks over 14,000 feet. I've climbed about 17 of them. And it's always fascinating to get up there in that world in the Alpine zone. And this is on Huron Peak, one of those 14ers. And it was during the fall, so there was this beautiful fall color down below. But you can see how high above the tree line you are here. So it's a rarefied world, and another way to get shots that, you know, very few people can get. Now I just want to talk about, you know, opportunity. I break opportunities up into these categories. This is a zone thing that I made up. Maybe some people have heard about the zone system in photography. This has nothing to do with it. This is Greg's zone. and one zone is home, I have another zone that is 10 minutes away. I usually reserve that for sunsets or sunrises or moonrises or moonsets. And it's a place I can go that maybe I can get a nice foreground for that moonshot or that sunshot. And I've got them all scouted out. So when I see a good sunset coming, a lot of times I'm in the car and I'm racing to get to this place where I want to shoot that from. That's the 10-minute. 30 minutes, there's a lot of things here and there's a lot of things in Denver where I live. A lot of them are state parks, some amazing photography, you know, that's that close by. If you live up here, Tamarac's obviously 30 minutes away. Where I am on Pelican Lake, Maplewood State Park is 30 minutes away. There's all these little treasures that you can find, and that's that 30-minute zone. Then there's some that are a little further away, like 60 minutes would be Phelps Mill. It takes me about 50 minutes to get down there. At home, I can get up to the top of Mount Evans. There's a road that goes up to the top of this 14er there. I go up there often, and that's about an hour away. I can get up to Rocky Mountain National Park from where I live in about an hour. And then there's another category that is as far as I can drive. And that might be as far as Alaska if you want to go up the Alaskan Highway, but usually it's maybe I'm going to the western part of the state, or I'm going out to someplace else in the west. And the difference is, if you can drive there, you can take all your stuff in the car. You know, you don't have to, oh, I better leave this lens behind. Oh, I better leave that camera body behind. Oh, I've got this extra equipment for lighting. I better leave that behind. Because when you get on the plane, you don't want to put that stuff in the cargo hold. You've seen how they handle that luggage. So everything when I get on a plane is I carry it on with me. And I divide that up into flying domestic, because you can carry a lot more weight flying domestic. They don't even weigh what your carry-on weighs on most domestic flights. But if you fly internationally, there's severe limitations on it. So when you go to Africa, you want to take some major equipment, it is really a challenge. And it's really nerve-wracking because you're flying way over what they say the limit is. Because you're not going to check that expensive, fragile equipment in the cargo hold. And most of the time they'll just let you get on. But I don't know what they would do. I'd do if they said, no, you got too much weight there. So it's kind of nerve-wracking flying on a lot of international trips especially. But again, I just want to show you, here's some photos that are available to you in your different zones. This is my home zone. This is off the end of our dock on Pelican just a week ago. Beautiful rainbow there after a rainstorm. You can still see the rain drops on the surface of the lake. This is again that same boat lift you saw in the last picture. It's my neighbor's boat lift, and this was a night shot that I got there. This is 10 minutes from my home. Now I'm in the 10-minute zone. This is 10 minutes up in Daniels Park from our home in Denver. This is Highlands Park, Highlands Ranch farmstead, the original farmstead. This is about 10 minutes from my home. This was a runner on a trail that's about 10 minutes from my home, with the Rocky Mountains behind her at sunset. This is 10 minutes from my lake home. It's the Pelican River where it comes into Pelican Lake. This is 30 minutes from home. This is in Cherry Creek State Park. A coyote in midair after a bull. This is 30 minutes from home. This is in, let's see, what is this in the park, or this is in Waterton Canyon. The South Platte River goes through Waterton Canyon. It's 30 minutes from home. There were a whole bunch of bears there in the fall of the year last year. I've got to tell you this story. They closed the park shortly after I took this picture because there were a lot of photographers in there taking pictures of bears. You don't want to do this with your cell phone. The reason that they closed the Waterton Canyon to people is that one day I'm in there taking pictures. I've got a big long lens on. I've got a tripod. I'm taking pictures of the bear way across the river. Occasionally the bears would come across the river. They're not afraid of people at all. And there was one big sow bear, this one, and she had 2 cubs. And they were up by the trail, and there was a mom there with 2 little kids that was hiking. And the mom kept backing up, trying to get closer to the bears. You don't go near bears with cubs. You don't go near bears, period, but you especially don't go near a sow bear with cubs. She kept backing up, and they were about 10 feet behind her, and there she is trying to get the selfie with her and the 2 kids, and the sow bear and the 2 cubs. Because of stupidity like that, they closed the canyon. So there were a lot of mad photographers at that one, but she wasn't the only one doing it. There were a lot of people doing this kind of thing. But, you know, this is 30 minutes away. This is in Cherry Creek State Park. There's about 25 bald eagles that overwinter there all winter, and you get some wonderful shots of bald eagles. This is in Waterton Canyon, bighorn sheep. See them almost every time I go in there. This is in Chatfield State Park. This is about 30 minutes from home in Denver. The next picture is about 30 minutes from home here at the lakes, and a very similar picture that I took in Maplewood Park here just a couple of weeks ago. These 2 little bandits were eyeing me, and they were real playful and cooperating. I got quite a few pictures of them with their antics. So
How close were you, Gene?
I was pretty darn close. I was probably 15 feet away. They kept coming closer to me. You know, I don't like to get too close to wildlife, and well, you have some depth of field problem if you get, you know, too close. And but you know, they didn't care. This was about 30 minutes away. This is in Chatfield State Park in Denver. It's a burrowing owl. Usually you see them on the ground, so it was fun to get a picture of them. This was in Roxborough State Park, a fox. I was 15 feet away, and he kept staring at me, so I said, I better take your picture. This is up on the top of Mount Evans. Just wonderful mountain goat pictures up on the top of that. You can drive right up there. You'll see these mountain goats all over the place, and you just have to wait for them to get up on a rocky ridge to pose for you like this. So. Then an hour away is you know, Rocky Mountain National Park, and there's just tons of elk up there. I love shooting, photographing elk. Better correct that. A lot of hunters up there too, because there's a lot of elk in Colorado. So, and of course here at Tamarac, here was a little baby trumpeter swan that was posing for me one day when I was driving up here. Kept getting closer and closer. I was just shooting from the car. I like to get out and move a lot, but a lot of times shooting from the car with wildlife works really well because the car acts as a blind. Whereas if you get out of the car, you'll see them start swimming away. But as long as you're in the car, they're used to seeing cars on roads, and sometimes you can get closer in the car. So I'll just put a beanbag on there, and this one was probably no further than 15, 20 feet away when I took this picture. I got quite a few pictures of the babies. Then the drive zone. Okay, then I'm going to get in my car and I'm going to go overnight. You know, in Colorado in the fall, I am gone for the month of September. I'm making trips out to western Colorado and back, central Colorado and back, and it's because of stuff like this. It is the most beautiful place on earth, I am convinced, for at least the month of September. And you get just gorgeous. This is, by the way, this is on Ralph Lauren's ranch. How did Greg get invited to Ralph Lauren's ranch? Well, when he bought the ranch, there was this old gravel road that went through the center of it, but it was public. He tried to get that closed and never did get it closed, so it's always fun. You go up to the gate, and there's a sign on it's called the double RL for Ralph Lauren, and it just says, please close the gate after you come in. So you open up the gate, drive into his ranch, close the gate behind you so the cattle don't get out, and follow this road, and you find stuff like this. So I get it for free. I have a hunch he paid a little more to get that view. So this is another area in Colorado down near Telluride. Just gorgeous. They have a couple steam locomotives that are running down there all the time. It's just fun to get pictures of them with the fall colors by them. This is again more fall color. That's why I go out there. It's just so incredibly beautiful. I'm about 6 hours away from Moab and Arches National Park and Canyonlands National Park. So that's a drive. I mean, I'm always going there for 2 or 3 days when I go on trips like this. This was a night photo I took at Delicate Arch, which I'm sure you've seen many
How did you
pictures.
stroke that?
We used some steady lights that we put on stands. There were a few of us, and just down below the rocks here, you put the light on a stand, and you dial it in. You take some test exposures to see how it's all working to get the exposure in the upper sky. Then we also had somebody doing a little light painting with a strong spotlight on the upper part to give it a little more light up there. So worked out pretty good. And this is in Canyonlands. This is called Dead Horse Point. Very popular place for photographers. You can see why. It's great at sunrise or sunset. This was a sunrise picture there. This is Death Valley. I love to go there. I usually make a trip there every year. There's just some fascinating photos. This is at Badwater. This is the lowest point in the United States right here. This is in Bosque del Apache in New Mexico. It's a wildlife refuge. I go down there every year. Just sandhill cranes overwinter there, and there's just gorgeous, gorgeous pictures to be found there. It's some wonderful sunsets against the mountains there. This is in Africa, in Botswana. No, this is in South Africa. Some lions at a watering hole. This is on the Chobe River. Fascinating place to photograph. The last photo coming up here real quick, it'll show you how you get your pictures on the Chobe River. It's a pretty fascinating way to photograph. But you're always worried about these hippos because a lot of times they're completely submerged. So your boat might be going right over them. You just don't want them coming up about like that about the time your boat's going over them, because that mouth isn't much smaller than the boat. They're just huge. In fact, more people are killed by hippos in Africa each year than any other animal. So they're dangerous. This is an elephant crossing the Chobe River. You see this all the time. You even see little baby trunks up there, and that's how they get across and breathe. They're swimming in that river. The water is pretty high at this time of year with the runoff, and that's how they breathe when they're swimming across. Use the water buffalo crossing to get away from some lines, but when they go into the river, very often the crocodiles get them. So you just see fear in their eyes when they enter the water, and you can see that in their eyes and in the way they look. But again, these are fly opportunities. You've got to fly to places to get there. This is another lion I captured that was stalking. I can't remember what it was stalking, but it's amazing how close you can get to these animals. We're in a safari vehicle, and they just don't pay you any mind if you're not on foot. And it's an open air safari vehicle. They could jump up there in 2 seconds, but they thankfully again know that wildebeest taste better than photographers. So, good luck. This is a marine iguana in the Galapagos. This is one of the things that helped Darwin develop his theory. Because this is the only place you find this iguana in the world, and it's the only iguana in the world that swims. You see them underwater if you are snorkeling or scuba diving there. This is over in Paris. Again, this is the Louvre as the sun was setting. And this is Lake Wanaka in the South Island of New Zealand. It's a willow tree, pretty famous willow tree that's out in the lake. And I went there the day before to scout the photo, as I often do. I always say the second time you go to a location, you get a better photo because you've had a chance to kind of check the lay of the land. And this was during the blue hour, right before the sun came up. And I just love the contrast of colors with the willow and the blue light. And this is on the Amalfi Coast in Italy, another fly opportunity. Just spectacular scenery across that whole, it's called the Hanging Gardens. It's up in Ravello, Italy. And this is the last photo. This is how we take pictures on the Chobe River. The company that we were working with Lou is the owner of this company, CNS Safaris, and you don't even have to bring any photo equipment over there. You can, if you'll notice, it's kind of like a long barge type boat, and each photographer has a chair. They'll give you a Nikon 600mm lens, a Nikon D800 camera, D810, and if you're a Canon user like I am, they'll spend about a couple hours just familiarizing yourself with the Nikon equipment so that you can use it, and tell you what all the best settings are. And this chair, your camera and the lens mounts on this post, and your seat swivels 360 degrees. So if you're seeing an opportunity over there, everybody just swings around in their seat, and the lens swings over here. And I had my own equipment and attached it to there, but a lot of the people just came over and kind of took all the hassle out of having to bring a bunch of heavy, bulky equipment over to the Chobe River, and just got marvelous pictures from this trip. So, well, that's the end of my presentation tonight. I just hopefully it'll help you take better photos. And I really appreciate you coming out here to see this tonight, and hopefully I'll be able to see some great photos that you got out of this talk on the Facebook page for the group here. So, is there any questions that I can answer for anybody that I might be able to answer for anybody? Great.